So guys, if you recently watched my April Fool's video, I just broke my jerry-rigged foam cannon. Come on, what the heck, it's all jammed up or something? Oh, no! I believe this is the M.95 CB, I forgot the name. It's like $100, but for some reason, even though it's so expensive, it doesn't come with a weighted ball on the tube, which means that if you're doing any kind of angled foaming, you're not gonna be able to get to the bottom of the reservoir. So like you'll have like a ton of soap left, but the tube isn't connecting to the soap, so it won't pull any out. And that's kind of a problem. Always gotta check if I'm recording before I'm too deep in the conversation. Dang, wasn't recording it, hold up. I didn't even turn these on, what was I thinking? I kind of understand why this broke. And I also want to show you guys how you can do this yourself. I'm sure you can buy a tube with a weighted ball at the end, and it's like really going to be structurally integral or structurally sound. Like you won't have to worry about making it or breaking it really. I just decided to do it myself because, you know, it's easy enough. So I just figured out what kind of washer diameter I needed and used some epoxy and got it stuck on there. So the reason it did break though is because the soap I use is pretty acidic. It's not like crazy acidic, but if I'm just leaving it in the foam cannon, it's just sitting in the foam for a while, it can kind of start to break down some of those connections between the plastic and the epoxy. And I even noticed that, you know, the washers are peeling a little bit, so this might be hard for you guys to see. I can kind of peel off some of the epoxy because it's starting to, you know, corrode. And you can see there, man, I just like freaking smashed my finger. All you need really to make one is you're gonna need a couple of washers that have an inner diameter of the outer diameter of your tube. You'd go a little more, a little less. I would prefer to go a little more though. And then the outside of the diameter of the washer, you just need to make sure it fits in whatever bottle that your tube has to go through. So mine just barely fits. And I can't remember the dimensions of these, but I'll post them in like the description or something. If you guys have the same foam cannon, then you could do this exact same thing. This isn't necessary for you guys, but for me, I have some sandpaper. It might be worth like sanding some of the washers to see if you can kind of get them to like open up a little bit, so when you do use the epoxy it sticks better to the washer, but it's totally unnecessary. I'm just going to take a little bit of time to sand the outside of the washer stack and also try to get the inside, and I'm also going to sand the tube a little bit. So the reason you want to do that is so that the epoxy has a more surface area to kind of cling to, and so you won't get a situation like what happened to me. At least you're less likely to. Probably could still happen though. So I got some 2-part epoxy. This is the epoxy I have. It's like tabletop epoxy, so it's not deep pour, nothing crazy there. Stuff is like 50-50, so I do 50-50 of each. I got a little reusable container to mix it in, but you could just use some disposable plastic cup and something to mix it with, so I just have this little stupid thingy, and I have a Q-tip. Oh, you're also going to want something to prop up the tube with. So while the epoxy is setting, you have something to support the weight of the washers in the air. So for me, I have this little chunk of wood that I can rest the tube on, and this won't be touching the ground, so it won't glue the epoxy to it or anything. And so while the epoxy is drying the washers stacked together and also the washers to the tube, I'll be able to trust that this is going to stay where it will, and it'll all set nice and easily. So I'm just gonna take a minute, grab some paper towels to put under all this so it doesn't stick to my table and I don't get epoxy on my table. Because if there's one thing I've learned about using epoxy is that shiz gets everywhere. If you want, you could definitely use some more coarse sandpaper. I think 120 is honestly a little light for this, but it's what I have, so that's what I'm gonna be using. It's a little awkward to try and do. Ow. Dang, that stuff is sharp. I'll be right back, guys. Got some grit in my pinky. Gotta just wash it out real quick. Might be worth wearing gloves while you're doing this. Okay, it looks a lot worse than it actually is, trust me, guys. Man, I gotta dry it. I gotta put like something on that. It's not pleasant looking at that for the video. Doesn't have to be perfect. Guys, you don't have to do the part where you cut your pinky unless you're doing like a historical reenactment of these events. That was just me making a mistake, so you don't have to follow that part of the guide. So I got this thing all sanded down on the outside. I'll get the tube real quick. So I just kind of want to sand just the tube a little bit just to give it like a light bit of something or another. Just to give it a little more like grip onto the epoxy. So I'm not doing anything crazy here. It's a very light. I don't want to like ruin the integrity of the tube either. You only really need to do this where you're going to be attaching the washers. So I like to do it just above the bottom of the hose so that the hose can still reach the bottom of the tube or the bottom of the reservoir. Because if you put it too low, then the washers will get in the way of when you're near those corners. I'm going to try and get the inside, but we'll see kind of how that goes. How am I going to do this? Let me see if I can just kind of... So I doubt this is really doing anything. But I'm just folding it up. I was going to use the Q-tip, but this probably really isn't doing anything anyways. I'll just clean it out with the Q-tip now. Man, I'm just working away. You know, we don't waste things around here, so let me just clean up my ear real quick. All right, all better. Okay, now comes the fun part. So we've already taken about 15 minutes gashing the finger and, you know, fudging around, but now we got everything set and ready to actually begin doing this. So let me clean up real quick, get everything that's not necessary out of the way. So now I'm gonna just pour just a little bit of epoxy. You don't need a whole lot for this. You know, you only really need like 20 milliliters, which is nothing. So I'm just gonna, okay, that's not part of the step. I just really had to cough. So I'm just gonna pour just a smidgen. I'm gonna do about 40 milliliters of this. This stuff's a little difficult to pour, just because one is really not thick, and then the other is like, comes out like jello. I hope you guys saw that. That was some warrior type grip. You'll see, comes out like jello. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but the closer you get it to 50-50, the better the result you're gonna have is in terms of how the epoxy sets and all that. So if you can, try to get more accurate measurements. Hold up. One thing that, whoa, okay, I gotta put, hold up guys, I need a little bit more of this one. I put accidentally like 15 ounces or 15 milliliters of the other one. So let me just get 5 real quick of this guy. So I have quite a bit for this, unfortunately, but now all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mix it with this little stirring stick. And you want to mix it really well, because if you don't do this really well, then you're going to get an inconsistent epoxy mixture. It might not set properly and leave parts of the epoxy remaining sticky even after it's supposed to be cured. Because this stuff's a lot of fun to actually use when you're making tabletops and stuff, because you can do some cool stuff with it. I know everyone these days is like begging on epoxy, but I still think it's kind of cool. So this is pretty well mixed at this point. So what I'm going to do, I'll bring you guys in close for this part so you can see in detail what's going on. Oh, how about that, guys? That is right on the money. So all I'm doing is I'm taking the epoxy and I'm just gonna throw a little bit on that area of the tube that I scratched up. Not a whole lot. I just want it to kind of get into those cracks. And so when I pour the washers on, this will kind of get under, you know, where the washers are supposed to be. So just sliding it on. All right. And I'm gonna actually move it down a little bit. Oh crap. So the way I want this to set, I don't want it to be dangling too far low, so I'm just trying to adjust it so it's dangling right. I'm gonna take some of the epoxy with the little dipstick and just pour it on top of the washers and try and get a nice good coat on there. You can kind of help to spread it a little bit. Just try and get epoxy everywhere except for the tube opening and closing. So I'm just trying to spread it around the washers but not interfere with the tube at all. You can see it's starting to pool. This stuff looks gross. Why is it all like just thick and white and creamy? Forget about it. So the thing about this is if it's really warm by you, you're gonna have a hard time to get the epoxy to set on the washers properly. You may or may not want to let the epoxy sit and kind of conglomerate a little bit. So as epoxy like starts to cure, it starts to thicken up, and that's where you might have an easier time after it's cured for a little bit and it's a little bit thicker. Golly, that looks disgusting on camera. I'm sorry, guys. Truly, not my intention today. Honestly, this looks like a good amount. I'm gonna let the remaining epoxy just kind of cure in here with the popsicle stick, so I'm gonna have a nice popsicle of epoxicle later. Good thing no one was around for that. That was embarrassing, that laugh. At this point, it's just a matter of letting it sit. And you can see there's still a little bit of a bridge at the bottom. So every now and then I'll just come back and try and clean that up. So I'm actually not gonna have a epoxy popsicle later. I'm just gonna use this to break that chain. And you can see there's still like a little droplet. So I just want to pay attention to that, make sure it's not gonna cause any damage. So you just kind of want to monitor this for like maybe like 15-ish minutes just to make sure, you know, this isn't gonna fall over. You've got a decent amount of epoxy around the washers. But this is a great way to make any of your, like, what do you call them, like flexible hoses, to make them weighted. I found that this actually works really well for me. I've had it like this for about a year and it just broke after I like smashed it with my knuckles. So it is not perfect, but it works for me. And I'm gonna use it until I don't like this foam cannon anymore, until I get a different one possibly that has already a weighted ball on it. That view is epic, isn't it? Just before we get into the time lapse, like, would I recommend doing this over getting a foam cannon with a weighted ball in it? I wouldn't recommend doing this over that, just because it's way easier to just get something that already works well rather than having to try and adjust something that works well to make it better. You know, it's a little bit jerry-rig sketch mode. You can see it's not perfect. That's why it broke in the first place. Like I said, I'm sure there are better methods for this, but I gotta do what I gotta do here. So if you do overspill in some fashion though, you can always just grab, I would put on some gloves first, but you can always just grab like a little paper towel and try and clean up around the washer. Like once you set the washer, it's not like game over or anything, but you just gotta be aware epoxy is really messy and it's really hard to clean up. Just avoid trying to spill the stuff, which I guess should be pretty obvious. Yeah, this is the gash. See, it's really not that bad. Like after, you know, it's set. It's just like weirdly deep. I wasn't expecting that from some sandpaper. Just kind of just sliced right through my whole life. Whatever, battle scars. When I go to the bar next, I'll be like, yo, and they'll be like, this guy means business. I'm not gonna mess with him. Well, I just was using some sandpaper. Oh my God, you're a loser. You know, every now and then what I'm doing is I'm just adding some and I'm just cleaning up the bottom. This is a sacrificial piece, by the way. You can set it up so it doesn't have to get destroyed or anything, but I've had this hunk of wood here for like a million years. I'm not really sure what I want to do with it, but this is basically junked. So yeah, I'll just have the time lapse going. One thing, if you want to reduce some of the bubbling, by the way, is you can always grab like a blowtorch or something that, you know, is hot and just kind of whisk it over the epoxy real quick. I thought I had something like that. Oh yeah, I have a heat gun. You just got to keep in mind that if you do use like a heat gun or a blowtorch or something, it can cause the epoxy to run a little bit more because, you know, you're heating up a liquid. And there is wind blowing with a heat gun, so. I keep like freaking ruining the montage. You can see there's basically no bubbles in it now. It shouldn't really have to be exposed for all too long. And besides, you don't want to mess with anything by applying too much heat. So I actually made a mistake on purpose for you guys, actually, so I can show you what to do. So come a little closer. So if you look really closely, right about there, got a little epoxy on the tube end. I don't really want that. I'm just gonna show you how to clean it up. So I'm just actually gonna grab a Q-tip for this. You could also use like paper towel or really anything disposable. Just gently removing the epoxy from the area I don't want it. And there still is gonna be a little bit, but that's kind of the price you pay for doing a jerry rig like me. I mean, it's not like it's gonna affect the performance or anything. If you're real with yourself, it's not really gonna do a whole lot of anything to anybody. I didn't realize how gross this stuff looked until I decided to show it on video. I think this is pretty old, so I think that's why it kind of looks the way it does. You know, all sappy. So at this point, I'm like pretty sure it's just gonna set perfectly. There's a little nub on the bottom that you guys can see. That's kind of the epoxy running off. I mean, that's why I keep like reapplying it every now and then. Everywhere else where I sanded and all that, it's looking really clear. All right, I'll let you guys watch in peace. How's it looking? All right, right, so I'll come back when this thing is dry. I don't want to film 4 hours of this thing drying. I don't think you guys need to see that. I don't think you guys need to see that or care about it. All right, good. I'm just gonna monitor it a little bit. Once it's all done, I'll show you guys the finished product and show you that it does work, that I'm not flipping around, not making up this BS. I'll show you that, it actually does work. I hope you enjoyed this little video, a little bit of craftier one. Not so much detailing related, but a little life hack for you if you got a foam cannon without a weighted, without a weighted, without a weighted okay, that one wasn't on purpose. The one without a weighted tube on it, because the weighted tube will make a huge world of difference when you actually do have one, trust me. As soon as I got this thing and didn't have the weighted valve, I was like irritated at how much liquid is left that I wasn't able to use. So with this, I was able to use basically the whole can. I actually can show you, it's kind of cool. So this is the foam bottle it comes with, and it's kind of impossible to see, but I just used this and I basically used all the liquid in it. Okay, dream on. There's no way I'm gonna be able to show you guys this. Oh, here, you can see this is how much liquid was left. So just that little bit there. So I'm like basically like not wasting anything when I use this, and it's super nice because I can just get all the liquid out of there. I don't have to worry about did I pour too much or too little foam, because I might not be able to use 100 milliliters. Instead, I can't use maybe 10 milliliters now, maybe even less. So big improvement there. Yeah, I'll catch you guys in a couple hours. If I forget to do that, hope you enjoyed the video, but I won't forget because I love you guys. So alrighty guys. So it's been about roughly, I don't know. How long has it been? Let's just say it's been like 18 hours. I think I did this like at around 5 yesterday, and it's now about noon today. So 24 minus 5. So it's been about 19 hours. So I was pretty close, man. You can see, basically, it's pretty much dry. It still needs a little bit more time to cure. I can like feel it because the surface is a little sticky, but you can see if I lift it up, boom, it's attached. You can see when I rotate it, the weight drags it down. So it's able to hit the bottom of the thingy-majig. I think I might have put a little bit too thick of an epoxy layer on, but the epoxy does add some thickness to the washers, so just keep that in mind when you're doing this. But it'll make your life a lot better when you're foam cannon in. All right, there we go. So it's been about a couple days. I made an oops and I forgot to record and give you guys an update after I was done. So one thing I do want to point out though is that where the epoxy was dripping, there was a bit of a nub, so I just sanded it down a bit and it fits into the foam cannon thingy-majig a little better. So gosh, I can't think of anything right now. So you can see it fits right in, and then I'm able to screw this on. Unfortunately it's not wireless, but it does work. And you can hear it. That's the washers knocking against the wall of the cannon, so that means that we'll be all good to go. And you can angle your foam cannon and you'll be good to you'll be amazing. The only thing is you can't use it upside down, obviously, because the tube won't fully U-turn on that. But yeah, it took me long enough to get here. It's been like 3 days or something. Maybe it's probably been less, maybe like a day. But time just freaking like warps in reality and all that stuff. So yeah, I hope you guys kind of learned how to make your own weighted tube if you're in a situation like me where you need a weighted tube, but unfortunately the product you buy for $100 just doesn't have it. Like, what? Still astonishes me. Even their newer version, so I was looking to make a thumbnail with the Bluetooth one, their newer version doesn't even have it. So not sure what's going on, but I hope you guys appreciated the blurry summer synopsis. But yeah, that's all. You can do it as well. It's super easy, doesn't require many materials, and the hardest part is figuring out which washers you need, or finding where to buy them and stuff. So later. I love you guys.